Drivers at the ready for the first of 2 rounds of practice. Today in Las Vegas, where it's beautiful, bright, and sunny. Signing autographs, getting ready to go to work, dodging selfie sticks, working their way through the garage. It is Monster Energy Series practice on FS1. What a gorgeous day this is. Yep, even up there in the snow-capped mountains. But down here it's 72 degrees. Track temp of 78. And the wind has always been out of the northeast at 4. So welcome to breakfast here on the West Coast. Welcome to lunch back east. Mike Joy, Darrell Waltrip, Jeff Gordon with you. And a couple of interesting aspects to this practice. I think the first one is coming out of Atlanta, Jeff. Pit road speeding penalties. The teams were not happy at the amount of penalties on pit road. They went to NASCAR, and NASCAR's responded. Yeah, so something that NASCAR's been doing over the last couple years, and they've ramped that up this year, is putting more timing lines on pit road. What that's done is that's narrowed up the segments that the drivers have to pass over. That time is then turned into miles per hour for the pit road speed limit. They've been seeing a lot of penalties because those drivers are trying to hold the RPMs. That's all they had to go by, and they've been getting a lot of penalties. So what did NASCAR implement this week? And today we're going to see where they're going to get those times on pit road during practice so they can fine-tune, hopefully, less penalties during the race. I don't know. That might not be the case. Well, we'd all like to see less penalties. Now, Kevin Harvick said, yeah, I thought about last week for about an hour after the race, and then I got over it. Can you, I mean, they gave one away because of a speeding penalty. Can you get over something like that quickly? Well, I'm a big believer in don't beat yourself. Right. When you have a dominant car, you led 292 laps, and you got the car to beat. You're in the #1 pit stall. You just pulled off an 11-something second pit stop. You drive back out on the track, and they say, by the way, to the rear. That your heart sinks. I mean, you know right there you made a mistake. And I understand why. He was having trouble getting out of that first pit box. He was spinning his tires. He couldn't get going, so he thought he'd buy himself a little extra time, but it cost him a win. It cost him a win. He had the car to beat. He would have won that race. Well, he shouldered it well. He said, it's on me. And now they're ready to rebound. Here's Matt Yoakum.
Mike, it's a combo platter of agendas here in the garage here this morning, and you touched on the track temperature and just the ambient temperature, how nice and cool it is. So drivers, not a big sense of urgency to get out because these temps are not going to mirror what we're going to see in the race. But a number of agendas. One, learn this new tire. But number two, you touched on it. They've added almost double the timing lines on pit road. You mentioned about NASCAR putting up the computer screen. We'll touch on that later, but I talked to Paul Wolf. They expect to test their computer readout as far as pit road speed later in this session. Chase Elliott's team, they're looking at maybe the last 15 minutes. They really want to try to dial in this tire, but keeping in mind Keselowski last year, he won the race, but he had to rebound from a speeding penalty. Vince?
Well, despite qualifying 18th yesterday, there's an optimistic vibe in Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s garage area. This is a good track for Jr. Now, he's never won here, but he's finished runner-up 3 times, and he's been top 10 the last 6 races here in Vegas. This is a good track for him, and they feel it. Even though, as I said, they qualified 18th yesterday, Junior's car was pretty solid in race trim. He was certainly positive about the direction they were headed when I spoke to him afterwards. And crew chief Greg Ives told me this morning, the emphasis in practice today, get that 88 to get through the bumps in 1 and 2 better than it did yesterday, but get through 1 and 2 without sacrificing the speed that they were fairly satisfied with in their last couple of race trim runs yesterday in practice.
And good point, Vince, about the starting position. Junior said we can race from there. Clint Boyer missed the final round by 1,000th of a second. He said, I can see the front from here. We can race from here. This is a wide racetrack with plenty of options, and if you're starting in the top 20 here, I don't think you should be concerned about whether you're in row 4, row 6, or row 7. And those bumps in turn 1 and 2, they're not near as big an issue in a race as they are in qualifying. I mean, I'm sure the groove's going to move up. You can go around those bumps once you get into the race, and it's not going to hurt you that much. So you got some options once you get ready to race here. You put the race setup in, it's going to ride the bumps better than it did yesterday. Hey, DW, look who's on pit road testing their pit road speed. Oh, yeah. Kevin Harvick, first one down pit road. You know, I think what last week was to me was a reminder of you can have a penalty like a pit road penalty or a lug nut that's loose early in the race, halfway through the race. What you can't have happen
is that penalty happened on the final time down pit road or that final pit stop, and that's exactly what cost Kevin Harvick that win.
And it was flawless. The team was flawless. He was flawless all day long until that last time down pit road.
That's just it. You don't have to be flawless. You need to be flawless in the moment when it matters most, which is, to me, that last run, that last time you come down pit road. If you're in the game, all you have to be is be in that top 4 or 5.
Screw up early. That's what you said.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, look.
Get it out of the way. Play the percentages.
Brad Keselowski overcame a loose lug nut to win the race. It's, you know, everything gets magnified as you get down toward the end of the race because you lose the time to rebound from a mistake.
Yeah, it's like sand in an hourglass. You know, there's a lot of it in there when you start.
Right. Matt?
Mike, teams have already picked their pit stall for Sunday's race here at Las Vegas, and you saw early on Jimmy Johnson come to a stop on pit road and then roll about 2 pits forward and come back in the garage. He had actually stopped in stall 33, which is his pit box for tomorrow. Also, you saw Kevin Harvick come to a stop. His stall is number 9. So he pulled into his box, gave him a great gauge of, and visually also for the driver, going down pit road, knowing how far down pit road his stall is. He can also check his lights on the dash. So a lot of different agendas working here in practice.
And we'll see a lot of that fine-tuning going on in both practice sessions today.
And one thing I wanted to see these cars run together. These guys go out and run by themselves. That's one thing, but I want to see them run close to each other.
Well,
maybe not.
Oh, down to the apron and up in front.
Yeah, it looked like
not that close.
Denny just got a little bit of the apron there, and it sent him up the racetrack.
Yeah. But with this aero package, Mike, and listen, we qualified. They're running 191 miles an hour this morning. That's a pretty good wake-up call, if you ask me. We qualified 193, 94 yesterday. This is a fast mile-and-a-half racetrack. I want to get out there and see how my car feels around other cars.
50 minutes to go in this first of 2 Cup practice sessions in Las Vegas today. Chase Elliott, quickest. Welcome back to the first of 2 rounds of practice for the Monster Energy Series at Las Vegas. Here's your top 10. Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney inserting himself between the Busch brothers. Trevor Bayne, your fast 5. Harvick, Buescher, McMurray, Stenhouse, Dillon. The top 10. The big story this morning is pit road and speeding. Now, NASCAR doesn't measure speed. They measure time over distance in each of the segments. But look at the top of this graphic. You'll see how many segments there were last year. And NASCAR has added a lot more timing lines. So the segments are shorter, and your opportunity to correct from a mistake is much briefer.
Yeah, last year you could speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. We saw that a lot. We see guys pass people in there as they were coming out of their pit box, speed up and slow down. Now, not so easy.
So this is down at the NASCAR hauler, where crew members and team executives are taking snapshots of the NASCAR laptop there that displays each car's time through each segment, converted time over distance to a speed. Those boxes in red are speeding.
Yeah, I know what's happening right now is a lot of cars are just coming on pit road, going in behind the wall and going back to their pit stall. They're not to their garage. They're not all focused on pit road speed, but you can tell that the crew members that are here on these teams, they are doing pit road speed, and each time the car goes through those segments and finishes down pit road, they're going to take a picture. That is the information that NASCAR has live during every race. When they call a car for speeding, it's because one of those boxes goes red on one of those cars, and they call that penalty down.
Now, historically, except for the All-Star race and when this system was first introduced, this information has not been available to the teams during practice. But in light of what's happened at Daytona and Atlanta the last 2 weeks, NASCAR said, all right, we'll make the data available for you to use. Pit road speed is 45 miles an hour. And like your friendly radar cop by the side of the road, there is exactly a 5 mile per hour tolerance. 49.99 miles per hour is not speeding. 50 is. Last week, Kevin Harvick got gigged in 2 sections, 50.3 miles per hour and 50.07 miles per hour. Here he is again.
Well, just like we've seen through inspection, there's tolerances on the templates that the teams push the limits on. same thing with the teams on pit road. They're going to push it all the way to the limit, get as close. They cannot afford to give up time on the racetrack. They can't afford to give up time on pit road either.
It just seems only fair that NASCAR would share this information with the teams. So, I mean, this is how we check it. This is how we monitor it. And so it gives you a chance to be sure you got it right.
Now, Eric Jones is in timeout. So is Casey Kane and Martin Truex. Pre-qualifying inspection penalties for all three. But here is how Eric Jones' team is going to deal with pit road for the rookie when they practice.
Hey, Chris, when he reads off mile per hour or whatever the segment is, you want me to read that to Eric as we're coming down pit road?
I think he's going to read off so Eric can hear it also coming down pit road. Eric, that way, whatever it is the first couple segments, he can bump up or down based on that.
All right, tempo.
Larry McReynolds?
Yeah, you know, your penalty does not start, I think you made this point, Mike, until your own pit road. I found it interesting. Yeah, Casey Kane and you're sitting in Eric Jones's car. They were out there the minute practice started. Martin Truex Jr. in that 78, he just pulled out there, so his penalty just started. But back to the pit road speeding. I've seen more drivers already early working on this, but Darrell and Jeff, I was telling you guys during commercial break, I'd rather go ahead and do it now. That way I can make an adjustment. But I guarantee you those engineers are not there just to see where they're speeding. They're seeing where they can make up more ground, which could be the good news, bad news about that monitor being down there.
Yeah, well, one of the things, Larry, it really makes this track, this pit road difficult is getting on pit road. I mean, if you look where entrance to pit road is, you back up here to turn 4, where you can see the entrance to pit road. Getting a wide shot here, pulling back. Here you go. Look how far, look where we are. Here's turn 4 over here. You're all the way around almost to the exit of that corner before you have to make that sharp turn down onto pit road. Well, that's hard to get a car under control.
And you're carrying a lot of speed, and it's a pretty abrupt transition there, DW. Remember how many pit road penalties there were last year at this race? Even our winner, Keselowski, had a penalty and rebounded from it. But, boy, now that they've added twice as many segments, it's really going to be challenging.
And it's not just the number of segments, it's the length. The shortest segment is the final segment. The next shortest segment at 89 feet is the first segment. So you can't use that first segment to scrub off more speed, get below the 50 miles an hour and average it out. It's just too short.
And I'll throw one other factor in here. We've talked about the digital dash this year, and there's a filter within that digital dash that the teams get to play around with. And what I'm hearing is the slight delay in the way it's filtered is not giving as true of information as what they had when they just had the tachometer. So there's some adjustment that's happening there, as well as the segments and pushing the limits.
Jeff, you've had to deal with this recently, the races you ran last year. I talked to Jamie McMurray this morning. He said different drivers go about it different ways. He said he likes to keep the gas applied and use the brake pedal to kind of keep the RPM down. What style did you actually use?
Yeah, and I know some other drivers that do it that same way. I always just tried to hold my foot, so I wanted the throttle spring to be sort of stiff so I could just hold that pedal and not have to fluctuate up and down. It's really difficult. Once you speed a little bit, you know that your lights start lighting up. They're green. Now you might go into a red, and when you get into red, that's your signal to back off a little bit. If you back off too much, it's really hard to get back up to speed. So you want to just be able to hold it perfectly. And holding that brake while you hold the throttle, I think is probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah, no question. It's easier to modulate speed with the brake pedal than the throttle. Jimmy Johnson has been cruising around the apron for several laps. When we come back, we'll try to find out why. Chevy drivers Elliott and Larson quickest in practice. Kyle Busch's Toyota. Blaney and Kurt Busch in Fords. They are the Fast Five. Dale Earnhardt Jr. completes a run and had this to say.
And then getting back to the gas. I'd like to drive in there and go, but I kind of got to lift early because it's going to be, if I drive in there on the throttle, it's going to be way too tight. And then my lift is going to gain a ton of front grip. So I kind of got to slow down all the throttle on entry to smooth out that issue.
Those were Junior's comments on the previous run. So they came in, they made some changes, and then Dale just told crew chief Greg Ives, it helped me in relation to what I was looking for to get turned down into the corner a little bit, but it freed it up so much, it actually kind of defeated the purpose, and there's so much bouncing in the car, absolutely no rear grip, and he termed the ride after that last change as violent. So they've obviously going to go back on that change and try to find a little smoother path for Junior.
Thanks, Vince. Casey Kane and Eric Jones have been released from timeout. Kane failed the templates twice in pre-qualifying inspection. So did Martin Truex. So that's 15 minutes of practice time lost. Eric Jones failed weights and measures 3 times and loses 15 minutes of practice. And they lose their pit selection, which is pretty important. They will have the last choice of pit stalls for Sunday.
Mike, when they're talking about how the cars are violent over the bumps and all that, when you're qualifying, you have a very aggressive rebound package in the shop. You want to hold that car right on the track. You want to hold it down. Don't want the body to move up and down. You want to hold that thing down. Once you get into the race or you get your race package, you can ease off of that a little bit. And that's what makes a car compliant. Makes it where it rides over the bumps. Might not be sealed off to the track as much as you like, but it gets through the bumps much smoother because you back off of some of that rebound and let the car float a little bit more.
Yeah, and DW, I mean, that's the compromise that you have to think about as a crew chief and an engineer and as a driver here at this racetrack. The grip is high, right? It's fast, but the bumps are very severe. So how do you compromise between getting the car to ride over the bumps? Well, you allow that car to not be so stiff and travel a little bit more, be more compliant. But what does that do? That affects the aerodynamic platform where it's smooth the rest of the way around the track. So you're going to lose a little bit of downforce and grip. So that's where you talk about this constant battle between where do we compromise, how much do we compromise, can the driver do something, do we have to do it as a team?
I think over the last year or so I've seen maybe 2 times when I thought the car was absolutely perfect. One was this Coke 600 last year, Martin Truex. That car was on a rail all day and night long. Last week at Atlanta, I thought that Kevin Harvick's car was on a rail.
Yep.
And that's when you got it exactly right. That compromise between performance, speed, handling, ride, you get it all together. You don't get that very often. You don't get that every week.
Now, as we went to the last break, Jimmy Johnson was riding around the apron. They were working strictly on pit road speeds because since the new segments were introduced last August, Jimmy Johnson leads the league in speeding penalties.
They say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But we're going to let you in on a secret. Which driver will get lucky in Sin City? Find out Sunday when we'll have all the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series action, starting with race day on FS1 at 1:30 p.m. Eastern and continuing on Fox at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to Las Vegas, part of NASCAR Goes West, presented by Toyota. 3 straight West Coast races. Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern time on Fox each and every week. You saw those neon signs. Those used to just kind of sit in the neon graveyard here in Las Vegas. Now, on the boulevard, we drove by them last night. They've made a museum for old neon signs. And, of course, a lot of them are all up and down the Fremont Street experience in downtown old Las Vegas, if you will, as opposed to the glitz and glamour of the Vegas Strip. But there's a lot of history to be enjoyed there. So Martin Truex has been released from timeout. He'll get a chance to practice. He'll share the front row with Brad Keselowski here tomorrow.
Looks to me like he's going to practice pit road speed.
Yeah.
Now, there's Cole Perrin, his crew chief. Last year, Denny Hamlin had the most speeding penalties overall for the season. But since Indy, when the new shorter pit road timing segments were introduced, Jimmy Johnson has been penalized 6 times.
Yep. I think you got to be careful what you wish for when it comes to those timing lines because, man, we have seen a lot of guys get bitten by those things. You just have no time to recover. They're so close together now that once you make a mistake, you're going to pay for it.
Yep.
You know what you need, Mike? You need a seat that vibrates. When you get up close to the pit road speed, your seat vibrates. You know, like a lot of cars are that way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
I love that technology.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Magic fingers, put a quarter in. Remember that? Larry.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that's kind of going on pit road. We had Martin Truex Jr. in the 78 car sitting in this pit box right here serving his penalty. The problem, that's Kyle Busch's pit box. Kyle Busch couldn't get into his pit box. The 78 actually had backed up where Kyle could work on not only coming down pit road, but getting into his box. But look how fast Kyle Busch left right there, because he has one more segment to deal with, but it's only 59 feet. Still has to be a little careful, but it's a very short segment, that last one leaving.
Well, and that launch out of your box is equally as important as maximizing your pit road speed in each of these segments. And that's something they're also looking at, is the amount of time it takes for you to launch and get up to that 50 or 49.99 mile per hour mark.
Now this I like a lot, because it used to be the driver in pit stall number 1 had a huge advantage. Because of the amount of time that he spent stopped, he could fire off at will and just race to the yellow line and beat everybody out. Now that area from his box to the yellow line is a whole segment, so you can't quite do that. There is the yellow line. So from pit box number 1, there's another timing segment there that every driver, including the driver in stall 1, has to be at pit road speed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mike. I mean, you used to just be able to roll out of this pit box right here and just cross the line, because the pit road exit line used to just be right there. That was great under caution. But if it was under green, you actually would lose time. So now it's really evened out pit road for about everybody.
Just remember, guys, those white lines aren't necessarily where the loops are. Those white lines are there in case the system goes down. NASCAR can again go to a manual stopwatch system.
Yeah, I don't care how many lines they got. Give me that number 1 pit stall, because that's going to pay off every time.
Now the teams will go out and they'll step off and mark off with a measuring device. NASCAR gives them the dimensions of each segment to the inch. The teams will still go out early in the morning and double check all of those measurements so they can put the time over distance into their computers.
And you know, folks watching at home and watching the race on Sunday, they may say, well, why are they complicating this so much? Why all the timing lines? Why do no mile per hour? There's no speedometer inside the car. Other forms of motorsports have a switch. Actually, when I drove the 24-hour race, I just hit a button and it held it at that pit road speed all the way down till I got the line. But you know what? I love this. I love that it's in the teams and the drivers' hands, and that there's another opportunity to gain or lose or make a mistake. That brings the driver into it again, just like what we see so often in NASCAR.
Yeah, we could have cruise control. We could have single lug hubs like all those fancy cars do, but we don't.
No, we don't.
Vince?
Taking a look at Ricky Stenhouse, currently running 13th. A solid practice for the Roush cars. Trevor Bayne, his teammate, is 6th. Ricky qualified 29th yesterday, and he told me, he said, it was so loose. And for Ricky Stenhouse to complain about loose, you know it must have been free. But it was funny. He was explaining to me about a conversation he and Kyle Larson were having, and he said, Larson asked him, he said, it's so fast. Do you feel like you're really flying? Like you're actually flying? It's so fast. That's how quick it is going into one here at Las Vegas.
Wow.
Very fast racetrack here, especially under these cooler conditions. Won't be quite that fast when we drop the green tomorrow.
Yeah, we got an Xfinity race this afternoon. The track's going to rubber up a little more. The crew's going to move up a little bit more. So we'll have a bit of a different animal to deal with tomorrow.
Matt Kenseth jumps up to 3rd into the Fast 5. Were you at Phoenix last spring when Carl Edwards and Kevin Harvick dueled to a finish of just a 100th of a second apart? You're going to want to be there next weekend. NASCAR keeps heading west, and we roll into Phoenix. For tickets, visit phoenixraceway.com/tickets.
That's always one of my favorite racetracks. I love going to Phoenix. I love the track. I like the dog leg up the back straightaway. Of course, that's all going to change in the next year or so. But still, I love that racetrack.
Wow. I'm sorry, we're speechless here because we've been doing the math. Time over distance in each of 14 segments up and down pit road. The final segment we mentioned is 58 feet 9 inches. So at maximum tolerance, 49.99 miles per hour. That's 73 feet per second. So the final segment, if you are right on the edge and not getting busted for speeding, you're going to go through segment 14 in 0.8 of a second.
Yeah, good luck holding 49.99 on your light system on the digital dash.
Here's what happens. Say you're coming out of your pit box, and there's a guy that's coming out in front of you, and if you just squeeze it a little bit, you can get in front of him, and that's a position. And that happens all the way down pit road.
Yeah.
So if you squeeze a little here, squeeze a little there, and the first thing you know, you're caught speeding. So the other cars kind of distract you and make you sometimes do things that you regret.
And I'm not so sure that may not have played a role in Kevin Harvick last week. He had the 2 beat him out off of pit road a little bit earlier than that. Unfortunately, they had to come back in for that loose lug nut. But the 24 was right on him as he peeled off.
Yep.
And he knew how important that inside lane was in that #1 spot to take off on the restart.
Absolutely. You know, for all of the high tech that is in NASCAR, sometimes the descriptions, well, they'll bring a smile to your face. Listen to Kurt Busch.
Car feels like a 3-legged table. It's teeter-totter between the left rear and the right front. And the right rear just has no grip with the 2 other tires being pushed in the track so hard.
Teeter-tottering.
Yeah.
Well, we always get some entertaining comments from Kurt Busch.
I'd say take wedge out of it. Sound like you got too much cross weight in it.
Well, we actually looked. I saw some cars doing this yesterday. You talk about compliance. If you just run all 4 corners extremely stiff and lower the car down where it just rides on the splitter, you're never going to make it over those bumps. So what I'm seeing is one of the ways that they can sort of maximize both ends of this is to allow the car to move from the right front to the left rear, especially the left rear. It seems like the left rears have gotten extremely soft in these cars, and they're using that to help them get over the bumps and maybe help rotate the car with a high wedge package.
Yeah, well, if you just look at the car, it's like an X. The right front and the left rear, they work off of each other. So if you put too much wedge in, then the thing's going to be on the right front and the left rear. You take wedge out, then it's going to be on the left front and the left rear, the right rear. So that's what you fight. You want, that's that magic balance you're looking for. You got to get the aero platform right, but you've got to get that wedge right.
Cole Witt, the Renai Chevrolet. He's 33rd right now. He's made 9 laps. And got pretty close to the wall right here. David Reagan. He did get the wall last week in qualifying.
Oh, no, that's close. That's a kiss. That's what I call a kiss.
That's more than pretty close.
That's when you come in and the crew members are looking at the right side and they go, did you hit the wall? Oh, I don't think so. When you look at that, you're kind of proud. That's a proud driver moment. You didn't hit it. They don't have to fix it.
They just kind of brushed it.
They just got to wipe it off.
Matt?
Mike, when you look at Las Vegas, certainly not one of Denny Hamlin's better racetracks. His best finish here is 3rd, and that was 6 years ago. And think back to a year ago when NASCAR had the open test day. Denny actually spun and wrecked his car. They had to go to a second car. This practice session, Mike Wheeler told me that the first run that the car was not what Denny wanted, going over the bumps. It really was all over the place. And he feels like the front just doesn't have good bite. They've made some gains, but Wheels told me they're not really going crazy at it due to the cooler temperatures. They want the track and the ambient temperature to warm up a little bit before they really start throwing stuff at it, and they have not worked on their pit road speed. They're looking at maybe the last 10 to 15 minutes to start focusing on that, or the second practice today.
You know, guys, back to this setup you guys were talking about, going over the bumps. There's different philosophies in that garage area, but what I'm seeing more than anything is they're taking both fronts and the right rear, and they're just coil binding them. They're just letting the car go down, and it's just like a solid rod. The only wheel that has any compliance is the left rear. Now, some teams are running a very heavy right rear spring, and that keeps the splitter sealed off because it keeps the rear propped up. But the problem is the car raises up as you burn the fuel load off. So that's one reason it's so aggressive getting across these bumps. They're taking 3 of the 4 corners of that table, and they're just locking it down like there's not even a spring in it.
And when they talk about coil bind, what Larry's talking about is the spring is compressed and all the coils are locked down against each other. So you got one solid spring. That's what coil binding is.
Fans, remember to follow @Toyota Racing for more content and more conversation around NASCAR Goes West, presented by Toyota. That'll be #NASCAR Goes West. Join the conversation. 17 minutes to go in this session. Chevrolet's fastest, Elliott and Larson. Toyota's Kenseth and Kyle Busch. Fastest Ford is Ryan Blaney in 6th. Oh boy, didn't the Wood brothers have a great day yesterday in qualifying?
Oh, yeah.
Blaney was fastest in the 2nd round and had a shot for their first pole since 2004. Ended up in the 2nd row.
Doing a really nice job. The whole team is. Jeremy Bullen's a crew chief, and Little Ryan, he's a good guy and a good wheelman, and that's a great team. Really anxious to see how they do this year.
Casey Kane off to a good start. He is 5th fastest in this practice. Vince?
And you guys noted earlier they were serving that 15-minute penalty at the beginning of practice, which crew chief Keith Rodden told me they didn't feel like it was a big deal because the track temperature is going to be a much different number in this practice than it'll be in the race tomorrow. So that final practice today, most important. But very few changes on this 5-car overnight, which is a good sign of how close they were when they rolled off the truck and race trim yesterday. They feel like they've got some pretty good speed right now during this run, considering the laps that Casey has on these tires. They're happy.
Completes his run. Jimmy Johnson, now that they are done checking out pit road speeds, making what I think is his 2nd at speed run. He's done a total of 13 laps.
Yeah, he just ran at 29:30, and that's a really good competitive time, depending on where he is on tires. I know they're not new, so that's pretty darn good time.
Pretty big sweep. Getting on the pit road there.
Well, you saw the abruptness of going from the track onto that apron is pretty severe, as well as you got a lot of grip here. You can carry a lot of speed there. It's just about getting slowed down in time.
NASCAR used to have stopwatches in the control tower, and they would randomly time drivers up and down pit road. Randomly timed drivers, and often time Rusty Wallace, and speeding penalties would be handed out accordingly. And you know, the teams went to NASCAR and they said, we want an objective process. We want something that's fair to everybody and totally electronic. Take the human element out of it. That's exactly what NASCAR did with this automated pit road timing system. And there is no subjectivity. If the computer flashes up a red box, you were speeding, and you pay the price.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. You got to be careful what you wish for, and they just keep making those timing lines up, as we saw in the graphic. They're much tighter now. It's just almost impossible to get away with speeding.
I'd much rather have it this way.
Well, I think the thing about the way they monitor the teams in the pits now with the cameras, I mean, nobody has an advantage. It's the same for everybody. And I guess that's what we're looking for.
Perfect.
Don't mean to switch gears here, guys, but one of the things I've been looking at is average lap runs, or about 10 laps is about the most we've seen anybody run. Looking at tires, right? We've been talking about the Goodyear tire that they brought this week, and is there going to be much fall off? Last week, what did we see? 2 seconds of fall off or something at some point, maybe 3 at times in the race. Only seeing about half a second over 10 laps, and some are 3/10, some are 4/10. We saw the 24 car went out early, ran a really fast first lap. He fell off almost a second. But looking at some of the runs here that have happened lately, let's say Jimmy Johnson, for instance, only about 4.5 of drop off. So this we're not going to see the drop off as much as we saw last week at Atlanta. And what does that do? That means the track position and pit strategy on tires is going to really come into play here as we watch Jamie McMurray get to pit road hard. You saw the splitter dragging the apron, smoke coming off the rear tires.
That pit road, it just slips up on you, man. You come all the way off turn 4 before you see it.
Loving NASCAR Goes West? Then don't miss NASCAR Race Hub, weekdays on FS1. This week, Joey Logano and Chad Knaus drop by to give us their take on all the action from Las Vegas. On Tuesday, it's all the best sights and sounds from Sin City and Radioactive. Plus, Dave Moody returns with a fan stake in The Pulse. That's all this week on NASCAR Race Hub. Monday through Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. And on Thursday, 6 p.m. Only on FS1.
The Race Hub guests this week include Drew Blickensderfer, Casey Mears, Ben Kennedy, David Reagan, Bobby Labonte, and Andy Petrie. Hey, congrats to Bobby Labonte being nominated to the NASCAR Hall of Fame. That news came out this week, along with team owner Joe Gibbs, team owner and track builder Roger Penske, and 2 members of the Alabama gang, Davey Allison and Red Farmer, are the 5 new nominees, joining the 15 returning nominees to the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And the vote for the next class of 5 inductees that will be taken between the All-Star Race and the Coke 600 during Charlotte Race Week in May.
Well, I certainly spent a lot of time throughout my career racing with Bobby Labonte and other names that you mentioned, but certainly Bobby, what a great guy, great family. Came up through quarter midget racing, very similar to the way I did. Won the Busch Grand National Championship back, you know, when I was racing against him, and then we went head-to-head for Rookie of the Year, the Cup Series, and a champion. A lot of great race wins. Certainly very deserving to be on that list.
Xfinity and Cup champion.
One thing that stands out, I think, about Bobby Labonte, and you talk about quarter midgets, is giving back. He built a quarter midget track, and it's one of the show places of that side of the sport, right off Interstate 85 in Salisbury, North Carolina.
Oh, I'm very aware of it. It's cost me some money because I have a couple quarter midgets for my kids. It is a beautiful place.
Yep.
And if you want to get your kids into racing and maybe be a future NASCAR star, I highly recommend not just quarter midget racing at that particular track, which is one of the nicest ones, and thankful to Bobby and a few other NASCAR personalities that helped make that happen, and others, but highly recommend quarter midget racing. It's a great way to get started.
I raced with Red. I was a kid, and Red Farmer was old when I was a kid. You know, he still races his dirt car. I don't know how, he's 80 something. I don't know really how old he is. I don't think anybody really does. But Red Farmer is an incredible, one of the members of the Alabama gang. He and Davey, both really just great racers. But Red, what a piece of history that is.
Well, Ray, he started the Alabama gang. He was from Hialeah, Florida. Like the Allison brothers, Bobby and Donnie convinced them to come up to Birmingham and run Birmingham, Nashville, all those tracks up there.
Kevin Harvick coming to pit road. We saw the engineers standing there making notes on that timing and scoring for pit road.
Red Farmer was born between 1928 and 32. We're not exactly sure, and
no.
He's not talking.
I'm going to go with 28 myself.
Now, this is something that when I was driving, to me, every time I came to pit road, I tried to push the limits to pit road. Just get in the rhythm, get used to it, the downshift, the braking, where my braking zone was at, getting to pit road, holding my lights on my digital dash, or for I did that last year, but the years before that was just on the tachometer. It also had a light system.
I think that's smart, Jeff. You get in the habit of doing that instead of bombing on pit road and running in the garage and coming back out. I think it's smart to utilize every opportunity.
Matt?
Mike, you had a great shot of Billy Keebler from Saline, Michigan, the team engineer. He was taking a picture of Harvick's time down pit road. The car has been free down at 1 and 2, and they adjusted their pit road speed. Also, Harvick wants the team to adjust one of the pages on his digital dash concerning the tax. So great opportunity this session to work on the small things.
You know, guys, we talked to NASCAR this morning, and they said don't expect us to do this every week with this monitor at the back of the hauler. They will do it in 2 more weeks at Auto Club Speedway, because that's about the final track that we'll be going to where they've added segments on pit road. But he said do not expect this every week.
And I would have to say, why?
That's exactly what I would ask.
I didn't get that deep into the conversation. We got a meeting in the morning.
A long time ago, they told me to never ask why. That was a long time ago.
And now you have this job, and things are different.
That's right. My job to ask why.
3.5 minutes to go in the first of 2 practice sessions. Full day of NASCAR here on FS1. Xfinity Series qualifying coming up, and their race later on this afternoon. And we'll see you for the Cup race tomorrow on Fox. Everything today on FS1. Xfinity qualifying next. NASCAR Race Hub. Final practice for the Cup cars. NASCAR Race Day and Xfinity Series Las Vegas, 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
I said we've trashed this pit road thing. Pretty good for the last hour or so. But you know what I also take away from all that? Woe be unto you if you speed tomorrow. Because, I mean, you've had every opportunity today to see the data, to see what, to get your lights right. How many, you think we'll have a lot of speeding penalties tomorrow?
I do. I still think they're going to push the limits. Now they've been able to fine-tune it to get even closer to
Well, yeah, that's it. I think to Larry's point, you know, yes, they've figured out what they need to do to not speed, but what else have they figured out?
They're figuring out where they can pick up speed where they're not fast enough. I know if I was still a crew chief, that's what I would have my engineer down there doing. Yeah, tell me where I'm too fast, but tell me where I can be faster.
Okay, knucklehead, we'll get back to you on that one.
I think you have an objective officiating system. Give the teams all the information that they can.
What they do
to maximize with it, and what they do with it's up to them.
Totally, I agree with that.
Could have more speeding penalties, could have less. It's a success either way.
It's a part of the race and the competition. That's what I love about it. So many opportunities to make up positions and lose positions.
Well, you know, the other thing it does, it kind of eliminates an unknown. Because if you don't know, if you haven't seen the information, the data, you haven't seen the laptop down there at the trailer, then you're just kind of guessing in a lot of ways. This way, there's no guessing.
Here's your leaderboard. Look at the young guns up there. Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, birthday boy Matt Kenseth. I'll stop saying he's our oldest driver, but he is. It's okay. 45
as long as
yesterday.
He's still getting it done the way he is at 45, I'd be bragging about it.
Absolutely.
You got Blaney 6. That's 21 cars still going strong. And you got Trevor Bain. He's 8th. You got Austin Dillon. He's 10th. Chris Buescher, 11th. Then you got the rookie that was the fastest qualifier yesterday, Eric Jones. He's 12th. Suarez, 13th. It's a bunch of young guys right there.
And things will pick up in final practice. It'll be much closer to race temperature and race time.
Yeah, I think we'll get a better idea about fall off, too, when the temps come up a little bit and we see how much these tires are going to slow down.
Yeah, that number I was talking about a little bit earlier, that's definitely going to be swayed by the track temperature and the speeds that the cars are running right now. As we get to that next practice, I definitely think we'll start to see a little more fall off.
Rookie Corey LaJoie getting some late laps in this session, which has 20 seconds left to go. Xfinity Series qualifying is coming right up. So with a lap of 28.197, 191.5 miles per hour, Chase Elliott wins this practice session from Kyle Larson Chevrolet, Matt Kenseth and Kyle Busch's Toyotas, and Casey Kane Chevy with Ryan Blaney, the fastest Ford, in 6th. Xfinity qualifying next. Final practice coming up later on.